Hi, everyone. I know this is, last session of the day. I was just saying to them, I'm pleasantly surprised by the turnout because you guys have already heard from Bill Gates and Sam Altman, so what else is there to say? But no, in reality, I do like to get a sense of the room before we start. So can you just raise your hand if you're an entrepreneur? If you're an investor? If you're K-12 leader? Okay, higher ed leader, and then workforce. Okay, sorry if I missed you, but as you can see, we have a really wide range of individuals in this room. Why I do think this panel is really special is for two reasons. We're talking about AI co-pilots in the workforce, and we're all professionals, obviously, and so this is fundamentally disrupting our day-to-day, no matter what your role is, right? And if it's not, it probably should be. And then the second reason is I truly believe that the four entrepreneurs I have in front of me are some of the most disruptive, if not the most disruptive companies right now, innovating around AI and education. So I'll just call them out this way, but we have Jason Wilmot, who's the head of education at Canva. We have Andrew Su, who's the CTO and co-founder of Speak. We have Kevin Moody, who's the co-founder of Mem. And then we have Arvind Jain, who is the founder and CEO of Glean. And so just going this way again, I would love for you all to quickly say, what your company does. Most people, I'm sure, know Canva, but what you're focused on specifically with education. And then I want to focus on applications of this tech. So what have you seen as kind of the most exciting or your favorite kind of application of this tech within Canva and then within your respective companies by your customers that you've seen? What's been the most exciting or invigorating for you?
There's a lot there. I'll try to unpack all that real quick. So Jason Wilmot, head of education at Canva, been in ed tech for 20 years, founded my own company about 5 years ago, but spent the majority of it at Microsoft. Really think it's groundbreaking for education, obviously in the last 6 months. Everything is moving at an every minute pace. If you're like me, you're trying to keep up on all the social media of everything that's happening within artificial intelligence. One of the most exciting things at Canva that I am so impressed with and so excited to be a part of is just the democratization of creativity. I am not a creative person. Even with Canva, I still struggle to be creative. But with AI and that technology, I truly believe we can democratize creativity, and that's one of the most exciting things for me.
I'm Andrew. I'm one of the co-founders of Speak, which is an AI-powered language tutor in your pocket. So we build language learning apps to help you speak English more fluently, and we use GPT 3.5, GPT 4, a lot of cool new generative AI models to do things like be a conversational partner for students, help them do small role plays to practice their English, like ordering coffee from a barista or checking in for your hotel. There's a lot of the sort of more rote and repetitive capabilities that GPT-4 can essentially take over from English tutors. And our goal is basically to build the way that the next billion people around the world will learn English.
Hey everyone, I'm Kevin, co-founder and co-CEO of Mem. Mem is the AI native workspace. And so individuals and teams use Mem. They can write things down in Mem. They can also connect tools like your email or your calendar to Mem. And then within Mem, we use AI to automatically organize your knowledge for you and then make it easily searchable and rediscoverable throughout your workflows. So you can actually leverage the knowledge that either you captured or that somebody on your team captured in the past. And I think I'll echo what Jason said in terms of creativity. I think that with Mem, the thing that's really exciting to see is when users use the product and they rediscover ideas that they had had in the past because of the way AI automatically helps them connect the dots. And it allows people to kind of build off of their prior thinking in a way that generally was only possible if you had really great memory, for example. And this is allowing people across all industries and students included to be able to actually kind of build off of their prior work and their prior thinking in a really creative way.
Hi, my name is Arvind Jain. I am the CEO of Glean. Glean is a search engine for work, and it's also a question answering engine for workplaces. So it helps employees in a company quickly find answers to to the questions that they have, so that they can actually do the work that they're doing faster than before. You can also think of Glean as a conversational bot, which acts like a human expert and an assistant to you. Someone who actually does your task for you. So like if you want to, ask it to, like if you have questions, if you want it to summarize information, if you want to learn how certain things are done, you can engage in a conversation with Glean and get your answers from it. Thanks.
Awesome. All right, so we're just going to dive right into some of the more meaty questions. But who here has heard of AutoGPT? Awesome. So for those of you who haven't or don't, troll Twitter like I do, people are now using GPT-4 to create these agents, again, leveraging GPT-4 that can basically create or complete tasks for you without any human intervention at all. So with things like this emerging and these co-pilots continue to get better and better, what do you think is the relationship long-term between a worker and these co-pilots, and what is really left in terms of a value add for humans to do that's uniquely human? Anyone, go.
So I think that the only thing I can confidently say is that nobody really knows, honestly. Even just a few months ago, it was kind of unimaginable, I think, a lot of what's going on today. So, that is kind of, I guess, my starting point. I do think, though, that one analogy I like to use is it's kind of like now all of us have access to this army of interns that can do, like more sort of low-level, repetitive tasks that are, maybe normally a more unpleasant part of your job. Now you can hand it off, act as more of a manager, a creative director. I think a lot of, we're seeing that for the content team within Speak. In the past, all of our content writers would, write all the scripts, all the curriculum. Now they write the outlines. We use GPT-4 to generate the rest. Human in the loop for everything. And I think that trend is going to continue for, I would say, most job types within Speak. Yeah.
Yeah, I think building off of that, I think the two words that come to mind in terms of things that are very uniquely human, at least currently, is direction and then judgment. And so models like, AutoGPT are incredibly good at going out and trying to accomplish some task, but they'll kind of run in the direction that you pointed them in. And so having good judgment and good intuition on what direction to kind of point your co-pilot or your assistant at becomes a key driver in how productive it actually makes you. Because if you go ask this thing to do things that were, low priority or irrelevant, you're going to get back, irrelevant work. And so I think that's the direction angle. And then the judgment angle is, although the models are getting better at being able to self-assess quality, I think that it still really comes down to human taste in terms of being able to look at, for example, many different outputs and make a judgment call on what is best and why it's best for the given context that you find yourself in. And so I think those two things are the things that are going to kind of stick around longest in terms of humans in how they collaborate with AI systems.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So do you believe that, anyone, do you believe that there's this kind of, just trend upwards in terms of productivity increases as these co-pilots and these models continue to get better, or does it kind of plateau at some point? And then also on top of that, how do you think about not hijacking the creativity of the user, right? In terms of you have these models that can complete tasks for you so well, how do you build them so that you can give room for the user to still be creative?
I have an interesting thought here. One of the things I was thinking about recently was that we are already, it feels like we're already in this trough where you can generate like a one-pager essay with ChatGPT today that passes first inspection, right? And it seems pretty good, but then once you actually dig in and edit, maybe there's actually nothing there. And you can already use image generation model like Midjourney to generate an image that at first inspection looks completely mind-blowing. But then as soon as you dig in and you try to get it to generate exactly what you want, it's impossible, or at least like super difficult. So I think we're in this period of time where it's already a crutch, and it's already potentially harmful if the human user doesn't already have a lot of the prerequisite like logical thinking skills or clear communication or writing skills. So I think that is a potential trap, and there's a lot of solutions to it, but fundamentally, I think it makes the importance of teaching yourself and your organization super clear communication, writing, logical skills. I think those become much more important.
And that's interesting because all week, I guess it's Tuesday, so over the last couple of days, from an education perspective, that's been really top of mind. It's been discussed. And I think it starts in the classroom. I know we have a lot of K-12 leaders in this room right now, and that's the shift, right? The shift that teachers are going to be making is teaching critical thinking, teaching communication, teaching collaboration. The technology is going to be there, but in the background. And I think all these great tools that are up here and that you're seeing all week, it's going to start in the classroom. And so for those K-12 leaders, it's about how do we shift and focus on critical thinking, communication, collaboration. Sounds like the 4 C's they are. It's been around for 10 years. But I do think the role of the teacher as a coach, as a mentor in the classroom, the role of a teacher teaching empathy and social emotional learning has never been more valuable. And I think that's one of the things I will state is I don't think that's going to change. And I think the role that teachers play is going to evolve. And obviously a lot of them are afraid AI can, like Andrew said, it can write a paper for you. Well, don't have them write a paper. Have them sit down in a group, talk about it. Have them sit down and collaborate together, because I think those are the skills that are going to be really important.
Yeah, I would also add one more thing to this. I actually feel like, today, this technology is not as good as, maybe it feels, at that first sort of, take on it. In fact, I feel like, we don't have any co-pilot today. Like what we have is maybe a little bit of help, that, these tools, give to us. So personally from that, and of course, it's hard to predict what's going to happen in the future. But today, that is how these tools, work. They're definitely helpful. But I'll give you some examples. I asked my marketing team, not to spend any money, with external creative agencies, and just use these tools to build all the assets that we need. And nobody picked that up. Nobody agrees to it. So when you actually, when rubber hits the road, you actually sort of start to see, the limitations, of these tools right now.
I want to fast forward, let's say 12 months into the future, and who knows how quickly this will happen, but I think your question was around the limits of kind of application here and creativity and human in the loop. And I think that the thing that I'm really excited about is as the models do improve, though, and you get to a point where you can have, let's say you're a movie producer and you're trying to or you're a student that's trying to get into kind of this creative loop of trying out ideas that could be little scenes in a short film. There previously was this gap between having the idea and then spending some amount of time, it could be minutes, hours, days, to actually go through the motions of putting that kind of proof of concept video together. And then at the end of it, you've spent all that time kind of doing the execution of the idea, and you don't have time to kind of go back and iterate on the idea itself. And I think that as the model gets better and better, just as AI progresses, what co-pilots are going to do is they're going to shorten the amount of time that we need to spend on actually executing an idea that we already believe in. And so you're going to be able to have an idea, play it out completely, and then look at that kind of final product and ask yourself, is this actually what I wanted, or do I imagine something else? And I think that is going to be this massive unlock, to your point around democratizing creativity, where you don't need to be, Steven Spielberg to try making a movie. You can actually just write down your idea of what the script should be and then see the movie and then decide, oh, that's actually not very good. Let me try something different. And so I think it's going to be very empowering so that people with just creativity and not those hard skills are still going to be able to explore that creative loop in a really novel way.
It's really interesting. I want to, Arvind, go back to a point that you said around, that's not perfect in terms of what these models are doing for us and what these tools are doing for us. And as you think about, I know Glean just had a great announcement around what you're building in terms of for the enterprise, and you have some great enterprise customers. how are you thinking about, balancing the fact that maybe sometimes what you'll give to them will be wrong, right? You're building in this tech, and all of you guys are building in this tech to your solutions for customers. And so for the entrepreneurs in the crowd, or even some of your maybe customers in the crowd, how are you thinking about, balancing that and making it okay when maybe sometimes they'll get a wrong answer, or they'll get something that isn't exactly right?
So that is actually one of the biggest concerns that enterprise customers tend to have today, is that these tools, they can make things up, right? They can be wrong. There is another concern, which is that, are we okay with, letting our, proprietary, organization information, are we okay with, letting it go out of our premises, into these tools? And we believe that, it has to be solved. You cannot actually go and, offer a technology which can be, wrong 10% of the time. I think, if it is if you cannot, get customers to build belief in the use case that you're trying to solve, then ultimately, it's not going to take off. So at least for Glean, that's what our strategy is. Our product is basically to answer people's questions, and we want to absolutely do it correctly. So we put a lot of emphasis on how you can ground these models, how you can actually limit them, in terms of, when you ask a question, don't ask the model that, hey, use your existing knowledge to answer this question. You have to actually constrain it and say that, we think that this is the right body of knowledge that you can use to answer this question, and then let it actually answer using that. And this technology still, can sometimes make things up. So you have to actually have to add maybe a post-processing, check, where you further verify that, okay, what it produced, does it look like, it actually used the information that I asked it to use. So at least for us, we feel like it's not an option. It's not an option to give people, wrong information sometimes, and you have to work very, very hard on trying to fix that.
We see this a lot with MEM too, in trying to answer people's personal knowledge questions, and I think that's a really great explanation of what goes on behind the scenes to solve the problems. I think the second half of the story is the user experience that you actually give to the end user of the product, and being very open and honest and communicative around how confident you are, or the AI system is, or giving the user some understanding of how you arrived at that answer, so they can kind of check your work. And I think we're seeing all of these new user experiences and patterns and mental models emerge that did not make sense 3 years ago without AI in the loop. But I think that consumers are very, very open to kind of being a partner to the AI system and trying to help it succeed in those, in 10% cases where it doesn't. And so I think that's the other half of the coin, is just being very communicative in whatever experience you build around where the limitations might lie.
I think there's also a lot of different types of tasks. If you're doing something that requires a factual answer, then maybe you're a lot more concerned about hallucination. But if you're just asking ChatGPT to play a barista and talk with somebody learning English, then maybe it's less of an issue. So I think, the general framework I use to think about it, and this was true for speech recognition models, other models before we started using GPT-3 and 4, is how do you design the product so that it kind of lifts up and shows off the strengths of the model and hides the weaknesses, which in this case might be hallucinations. So that's another way to think about it.
Yeah, all great points. Jason, I want to come to you for a second. I know you were talking about how important creativity is, and how Canva, pre this whole generative AI wave, really was this massive unlock, right? You were the first one to kind of be like, I can make everyone a designer. So now, just more broadly, right, thinking even beyond design and creativity, how do you think about getting these tools and these generative AI tools into the hands of users who may not think, maybe I didn't think I was a designer, maybe I didn't think I need Canva, or how are you really unlocking kind of those use cases for users who might not have historically been, coders, designers, things like that? How are you thinking about really unlocking those use cases for workers?
When you think about K through 12 and you think about teachers, they're the experts, right? They're the experts in the subject they're teaching. And so from a Canva perspective, we're really thinking about how do we put the technology behind Canva and let it be it just sits behind it. And I think Andrew had a great point here about, depending on the questions they ask. And at Canva, we're a creative solution, right? Thinking about the questions they ask to design, it's not factual. It's purple, it's orange, it's colors. It's create me a magic presentation on, 5th grade math. We can start a platform for that teacher to save them time. We can create digital design for them. We can help democratize for that. But typically, historically, I'm not saying all teachers, but many teachers struggle with the design aspects. They're great presenters, they're great coaches, they're great mentors. And so how can we help save them time and that creativity while they're in front of the classroom? And I think that's the most important thing that we're putting at the forefront is anything we do with AI should be able to save people time, should be able to help them. And I think that's one of the things as you look at all your platforms for those entrepreneurs in the room is like, how can you put it behind a curtain where it's not scary? Right, you go to a K-12 classroom and repeat AI. It's pretty. My daughter came home. She's a freshman in high school, and she said, "Dad, what's this chat?" This is months ago. What's this Chat GPT thing? I got told by a professor I can't use it, or a teacher, and I was like, "Well, that wasn't a good idea." What happens when you tell a 15-year-old they can't do something? She's gonna go use it, right? And so I think that's one of the things is how can we put the technology behind in a comfortable way where the user, whether it be a worker within a corporation or a teacher or a student that, it's positioning the right feedback. And if it's factual, great, but we have to caveat in that scenario that it may not be factual, that the user can determine whether to move forward. And as it relates to creativity, we're all about how can we save teachers time, creating a lesson plan, helping, generate new presentations for that teacher, because that's really what we think is the most important part of our platform.
Yeah, I love this idea of saving time. And right now, personally as well, like if I'm thinking about all the different tools beyond ChatGPT that are out there, whether we're talking about language learning, writing, coding, knowledge management, it's overwhelming, right? There are so many tools or things you can choose from that will probably save you time. And so I guess my question is how are you thinking about for kind of the people out there who are professionals and then also leading maybe a team, how should they think about prioritizing some of these tools? And is it all about saving time? Is it about thinking about output, productivity? How should they prioritize really making sense of all this noise and picking which tools to really equip their team with?
I'll jump in. I think you just have to try some tools. I think that one of the amazing things right now is that companies, really large companies even, are putting out software far earlier than they would have in a traditional cycle. And so you can actually try things days after it actually exists within that company. And now they're allowing external users to beta test it. And so if you hear about some tool, I think that's the best thing to do is just carve out a little bit of time every week to try some new things and see what actually feels good versus not in practice.
One thing we do in Speak is I told all of our engineers and other teams that we will reimburse ChatGPT Plus subscription. Use it for as many things as you can every day. I think that's sort of immersion and, like Evan said, just trying stuff on a daily basis is basically how you get people to sort of comfortably function in this new world. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, that made me think of, we actually introduced this idea of the AI stipend at MEM. And so all of our employees get $100 a month to subscribe and try different tools that cost subscription prices.
How do you think that, because we have so many tools across so many different platforms, and so I guess I have two questions. One, if you're an entrepreneur in the room and you're trying to build some of these AI tools, right? We have two knowledge management platforms right on this panel, and how do you think about defensibility? What's my edge? I'm an entrepreneur building this space. Everyone says data, but is data that important, defensible? I guess would love to hear from you guys as entrepreneurs. Easy question, I know.
Yeah, I guess, yeah. Well, I think the one thing that I have noticed is that, first of all, any application that exists today, there is a good chance that it's going to be redesigned with AI capabilities. and it's probably going to perform much better than before. So there are a lot of ideas out there, where people have the same thought that I just shared, that, maybe I should actually build a new, expense management tool, which uses AI. And I feel like, AI is going to be table stakes. Like, it's actually fairly easy to incorporate these technologies in existing products. So like, you've already seen Microsoft, which you could imagine, the productivity suite, it's been there for, that's as legacy as something gets, it's a 30-year, 40-year-old product. But yet they were able to actually, show that they can incorporate AI fairly quickly. So I don't think that creates an edge, that you are AI-based. And you really have to go and think about, actual problems that you're trying to solve for users and build new workflows, hopefully, which can actually make, their life simpler. So that's our belief, that you have to go beyond, just utilizing this new technology to win.
Yeah, what's interesting though, right? We have Canva on the stage as well, and so it's again kind of David and Goliath. Like I'm sure there's a bunch of creativity creator entrepreneurs out there who are trying to build platforms, and then you have these massive companies with a distribution advantage embedding this technology into their platform. And so I think that's right. It's always about consumer first, centering around what's a unique value prop that you're giving to the consumer.
And I would just say, from an education perspective, solving a problem in education is more than technology. So really incorporating everything you do, whether it's training teachers, whether it's focusing on the student as a consumer, language, think about how you can incorporate more than the technology and the workflow of these individuals. And like Arvind said, how can you solve a problem? How can you help solve a problem in the classroom? And I think you'll be very successful, whether it's a creative solution, whether it's an AI solution, but really focus on the problem that you're trying to solve in the classroom and then build the solution around that.
Yeah, and I think building off of the David versus Goliath point earlier, I think that, as a David, you also have the ability to think about what would this workflow look like if you're building it from the ground up in what you'd call an AI native way. And I think this phrase AI native is something that, at MEM we ask ourselves every day in terms of the fact that we don't have the baggage that Microsoft Office or Google Workspace has when they're thinking about those workflows. And so if you're an entrepreneur that is just starting out in this space, I think you have this incredible opportunity to look at it from those first principles of what would the AI native workflow here look like.
Yeah, that's really interesting. You can tell it's Tuesday. My voice is hanging on by a thread. Yeah, Andrew, I wanna go to you for a second. It's really interesting because a lot of these co-pilots, we talk about co-pilots and then we talk about some of these AI tutors, and really they actually look very similar, right? In terms of ChatGPT is a chat interface, and GitHub Copilot, it now has a chat interface. And so a lot of these, and Glean, you just built that as well. And so, and obviously, your goal at Speak is to really replace the human tutor. And so do you view, I guess, a lot of these co-pilots long-term, are they just gonna be my personalized tutor that kind of understands me, all of my skills as a worker? Or do you think it'll stay kind of verticalized in many different co-pilots? And would love to hear your take on that.
So I think the verticalization effects are going to be extremely strong. The tools for a recruiter doing engineering sourcing for a startup are going to look, that there's existing workflows that look completely different from the way that a teacher wants to use ChatGPT. I think there will definitely be shared techniques around understanding the user and understanding how they want to use various products, but I don't really see us competing with GitHub Copilot X anytime soon. I do think that there is a huge overlap between a Copilot and a teacher, in the sense that when I use Copilot, I haven't gotten access to Copilot X yet, but it'll only be more in this direction. Like when I use Copilot, it's my assistant in writing code, but of course I'm learning at the same time. Right? And Copilot X will only go more in that direction with the chat feature. I'll be able to ask it why, and it'll tell me why, and then I'll learn. But I really think that, back to kind of the previous question, for every vertical, you have to build something people want, right? And that will never change. There's a lot of shiny object chasing, like a lot of projects that are built in 3 days on top of GPT 3.5 or 4. But at the end of the day, all of them, none of those are real products because there's a lot of other parts that make up a company. You have to understand distribution, retention, long-term things. So there's a lot more than just the model.
But I guess as these, as your language tutor gets, better and better, and it will, all these products will get better. I guess do you think that at scale, because it's funny, everyone has now rediscovered Bloom's taxonomy and how the gold standard obviously is scaled one-on-one personalized tutoring. What's left in terms of, do I need a human tutor around language? Or, long-term is Speak enough for what I need?
So I think the direction Speak is going and where we hope to build things is that a lot of the things that you need to reach fluency, like just practicing conversation and pronunciation for thousands of hours with some sort of partner, a lot of that really rote stuff will become automated. But fundamentally, people they want to learn languages, and they are learning English to connect with other humans. And I think that is a really sort of authentic thing that is not going anywhere. So, it's in the same trend. I think a lot of the very rote stuff is going to get replaced and will become more accessible to people who currently don't have the money to pay for a human tutor from the United States, for example. Now they will be able to get that sort of practice and opportunity to reach fluency. I think everyone is still going to want to talk ultimately with a real human from the United States, and it'll be a lot more cultural exchange, a lot more about the cutting edge of like how the English language works now. It's very rapidly evolving. There's so many things, I think, that feel kind of unique to the human-to-human sort of like language connection that we, for now don't really have any plans to tackle. I think there is just so much of, so much like almost like wasted energy right now that can and should be automated. And that's really the thing that we're running toward.
If you all were starting, I'm gonna rewind a little bit. If you all were starting your careers again, right? Or starting college again or education, and you were kind of at that early stage of your career, obviously there's a lot of unknown, and Andrew said it great in the beginning. The reality is nobody knows in terms of how these tools are gonna progress and what skills you'll need. How would you prepare yourself? And right, we're all lifelong learners, so even today, or who you are today, how are you preparing yourself for this world where there is a lot of unknown, but as a professional, I wanna make sure I'm skilled and I stay on top of the skills I need. How do you navigate this uncertainty?
Yeah, it's interesting, and if any of you have children in the room that are ages, 10 through 16 or 17, they're navigating this real time, and there's a lot going on in the world. And I would say, I think Andrew had a good point. It's like scope. You don't have to become a master of something at 16, 17 years old. It's how do you learn a lot about potentially multiple languages? You don't have to master them, but you can learn a lot about it. And then when one strikes you, or when you're interested from a culture perspective, then you can go down that path. Or whether it's coding, and we talk a lot here about AI and technology, but there are children that don't even know that's a capable career for them right now. And so really opening the eyes to these children in the future is gonna be really important for us. And so, if I go back to your question of like when I was in high school, what would I do? I would have learned more. I would have not just stayed in specific subject. I was a math engineer guy. When I got to college, I was like, I wanna go a different route towards business. But I would just really encourage all our youth and lifelong learners to continue to learn. I think, Kevin said it, like spend time like every couple hours a week just learning new tools. You'll find out what you really enjoy and like. So that's how I would.
Yeah, one quote that stood out to me was when you described the college professor who said, you can't use ChatGPT, right? I think that is exactly the wrong thing to do. I think that, given how, AI is evolving, the thing that I would encourage students to do is try to push it as far as you can and leverage it to the fullest extent possible, and then free up, your headspace to be able to focus on even more interesting and more creative ideas. And I think that if we go back to that thought around how the two kind of uniquely human things are, giving direction and then judgment, one thing that we found to be really, really critical in terms of kind of working with AI is communication skills. Basically, the AI that you're working with is going to be pretty much a reflection of how clearly you can articulate the thing that you want it to do. And so I think for students, at all ages, it actually is one of the best feedback loops of getting a good sense in real time of how strong of a communicator you are. Because you put the thing in, a command, for example, and it comes back with something random, and your first instinct is, well, what did this AI do? But then you sit there and you reflect a little bit and you realize, oh, my instructions were pretty unclear. And so I think that the skill that is going to be really, really important for this next generation is written communication, because that's the way that, even writing code just becomes a question of, can you clearly communicate, what you want the program to do?
All right, we don't have much time left, but would love for you each to go one at a time. And there's been a ton of discussions, panels on this topic, right? It feels like we've exhausted all the conversations, but just as you are working within your respective companies and you're innovating and you're building, what's something that if you were talking to different entrepreneurs or talking to people who are implementing this into their classroom or for their companies, what's something that you just some advice you would give in terms of definitely keep this in mind, maybe something that hasn't been discussed as much, right? People talk about data, people talk about distribution, but are there any topics that maybe you don't think are coming up enough in the conversation that you would really urge people to keep in mind?
I'll say two: accessibility and equity. I think just keep that in the back of your mind. 25% of the global population has a disability. So if you design for that, it will help others, and really keep that in the back of mind, and equity in terms of what the future looks like. Because we are all very fortunate in this room, and probably people watching are very fortunate, so keeping that in mind as well.
One thing that I found to be super effective just while running Speak is to encourage individual teams at all levels to use these AI tools to build things and to start to automate away as many parts of their job as they can, right? And that has the effect of making people happier because they get rid of the crappy parts of their job and they learn about AI while doing it. So that's a thing that I'm going to focus a lot on this year and feels like a really powerful strategy to me.
One thing you hear about a lot is bringing together, diversity of opinion when you're tackling new projects, new problems. But I think despite trying to implement that, usually if there's a software engineering problem, you bring together your best software engineers to try to solve it. And if you're building in this space, I think one kind of not obvious thing, and this ties back to the idea that the main way to get the most out of AI is to be a clear communicator, is actually bringing in very different folks to actually help brainstorm the technical solutions in the AI space too. So for example, bringing in the head of comms to actually think of how do we better fine tune this AI model, and how do we set up the right prompt strategy, because they're actually the much better communicator. And I think that this is a really interesting idea, which is, roles matter a lot less when the kind of the medium that you're using to communicate is just English language. And so bring in kind of not classical roles to new problems.
And so I would finish with, these are difficult times, especially for people building, startups. While, there is such great technology that can use to build amazing products, but it's also quite stressful. The technology changes so fast that, whatever you build today, 2 weeks, later, it's actually obsolete already. And so that is one thing that we are noticing, even in our team, is this, this extra stress that people have to deal with. This is not how we work. You'd always have, time to think about products that you build, and, you sort of go and think about it. You will design them. You will take 3 months or 6 months to actually go and build a product. You don't have that option anymore. Things change so fast. And so I think, and it may actually also demotivate people. Like, you as for example, as a founder, you start to build something, and then 2 weeks later, you will feel like, oh, like something else, like whatever I did is now, like, this AI can do that, automatically. So all the effort I put in is actually wasted. And so you're gonna go through, like, these sort of mental, challenges, like as you build products. And so my advice to everyone is to basically, like, just have that resolve that, like, no, like, AI is not going to solve all the problems, and you have to sort of, keep up with it, but you will be able to add value, like, if you persist.
Great. Well, so many takeaways from this amazing panel. Thank you guys again. I learned so much. I know the audience learned so much. I do think relatively we all should be feeling positive in terms of humans still have a lot to add, a lot of value to add, and the future isn't bleak. It's actually very positive. So can we get a round of applause for our amazing panelists?